Human took a bullet to protect her, not knowing she was an alien princess. The station was alive with sound and movement, a bustling hub at the edge of human-colonized space. Ships of all shapes and sizes docked along the massive ports, while merchants hawked their wares and travelers hurried through crowded corridors. Ethan walked among them, his security uniform crisp and clean, eyes scanning the crowd for anything unusual. He had done this job for years, and nothing seemed to surprise him anymore, or so he thought. As he walked, Ethan noticed her. She was small and unassuming, her figure almost lost among the throngs of aliens and humans alike, yet she carried herself with a quiet grace that drew attention despite herself. She had long, silvery hair that shimmered faintly under the station lights and eyes that seemed to notice everything. Most people would have missed her, but Ethan's training made him alert to details others ignored. He caught her looking at a small alien vendor with curiosity, examining strange objects that Ethan couldn't even identify. There was a light in her eyes, something more than mere curiosity. It was awareness, intelligence, and a kind of quiet determination. Ethan felt an inexplicable pull toward her, a mix of curiosity and concern. Something about her didn't fit in the chaos of the station, and he had a feeling she didn't belong here. Ethan approached her slowly, careful not to startle her. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice polite but firm. The girl turned to him, a small smile on her lips. "Not really," she said, "just looking around. Everything here is so different from what I'm used to." Her voice was soft but carried a clear confidence that surprised him. "Yeah, it can be overwhelming," Ethan admitted. "I work here as a security officer. I make sure people like you don't get into trouble, or that trouble doesn't find people like you." He tried to keep his tone casual, but he found himself watching her carefully, noticing the way she shifted her weight, the way her eyes scanned the crowd. She laughed lightly, a sound that was both musical and soothing. "I suppose that's a good thing. I wouldn't want to get into trouble." There was a subtle seriousness beneath her words, a hint that she knew more than she let on. Ethan nodded. "Well, if you need help, I can show you around. There are a lot of things here that can be confusing if you're not used to the station." For a moment, she hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you, that would be nice." As they walked together, Ethan noticed that she moved differently than most humans. She seemed aware of every person, every movement, every subtle shift in the station's energy. She stepped lightly, almost gliding, avoiding collisions and staying just out of the way of bustling crowds. It was impressive, almost uncanny, and Ethan found himself studying her more closely than he should. They passed through corridors filled with merchants selling exotic goods, from glowing fruits that floated slightly above their trays to devices that hummed softly with unknown energy. Ethan explained some of the more dangerous areas, places where accidents were more likely, and she listened intently, absorbing every detail. "You really know this place well," she said after a while, her eyes reflecting the dim light of the corridor. "I've been here long enough to know where trouble usually finds people," Ethan replied with a small smile. "You never know what might happen in a place like this." She smiled back, but it was tinged with something else, something that made Ethan pause. There was a depth in her eyes, a quiet intelligence, and a hint of experience beyond her years. He didn't know why, but he felt a strange mix of curiosity and protectiveness toward her. As they continued walking, Ethan began to notice subtle signs that someone might be following them. Small movements at the edges of his vision, shadows that didn't belong, and a sense of tension that prickled his instincts. He scanned the crowd carefully, alert for any threat. "You're very observant," she said quietly, almost as if reading his thoughts. Ethan frowned slightly. "It's my job. I've learned to notice things other people miss." He glanced around again, seeing the faint outline of a figure slipping between the crowd. He didn't want to alarm her, so he kept his voice calm. "Just stay close to me for now. It's better to be safe." She nodded, her expression serious now. "I can do that." They continued through the station, moving toward a quieter section where travelers often stopped to rest. Ethan noticed a small cafe tucked into a corner, its lights warm and inviting compared to the harsh fluorescent glow of the station corridors. He led her inside, and they found a table near the back, away from most of the crowd. As they sat, Ethan couldn't help but study her. There was something different about her, something he couldn't quite identify. She spoke carefully, never revealing too much about herself, yet every word carried a subtle hint of wisdom and experience. "My name is Leora," she said finally, offering a hand. "Ethan," he replied, shaking it. "Nice to meet you, Leora." For a moment they just looked at each other, two strangers in a vast and complex world. Ethan felt an odd sense of connection, a pull he couldn't explain. He didn't know her story, didn't know the danger that followed her, and didn't know how extraordinary she truly was. They talked quietly for a while, discussing simple things: the station, the food, the people around them. But Ethan noticed that Leora had a way of observing everything without seeming to stare, a way of understanding the world that was almost otherworldly. "Are you new to this area?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I've been traveling a lot. It's hard to find a place to rest sometimes." Her eyes met his, and for a moment Ethan saw a flicker of vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. "I can help with that," he said softly. "You don't have to do this alone. I know people here who can make sure you're safe." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Thank you, Ethan. That's kind of you." They finished their drinks, and Ethan suggested walking a little more before she found a place to rest. As they left the cafe, he remained alert, scanning the crowd, while she moved beside him with an ease that suggested she was used to navigating danger. For a brief moment, Ethan wondered about her past, about the life she had led to be so aware and so careful. He didn't ask, he didn't want to pry, but he felt a growing sense of responsibility. He didn't know why, but he wanted to make sure she was safe, to protect her in a world that seemed increasingly dangerous. Unbeknownst to him, shadows moved at the edges of the crowd, figures observing from a distance. Bounty hunters and agents from a distant world had tracked her to this station, unaware that a human had stepped unknowingly into the path of an extraordinary being. Ethan led Leora through quiet corridors, speaking in calm tones, pointing out exits and safe spots. She listened carefully, but there was a tension in her body, a readiness that suggested she was not entirely unfamiliar with danger. "Do you always watch people so closely?" she asked softly. Ethan shrugged, trying to sound casual. "It comes with the job. You get used to noticing the small things, the things that matter." She nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "I see. You have skill. I like that." He smiled faintly, feeling both proud and slightly embarrassed by her praise. "Thanks. It's not much, but it helps keep people safe." They reached a quieter section of the station, near a small observation deck overlooking the hangar. The view was spectacular, with ships of all sizes moving in and out, lights reflecting off metal and glass in dazzling patterns. Leora paused, looking out over the scene with awe, and for the first time Ethan saw something shift in her expression, something almost childlike, a spark of wonder that reminded him she was more than she seemed. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "It's easy to forget sometimes with all the chaos." They stood together for a moment, watching the ships come and go, the station alive with movement. Ethan felt a quiet determination building inside him. He didn't know what the future held, didn't know the dangers that followed her, but he knew one thing: he would do whatever he could to make sure she stayed safe. Leora looked at him then, a faint smile on her lips, and for a moment the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. She didn't reveal her secret, didn't explain who she truly was, but Ethan felt the weight of unspoken truth in her gaze. And somewhere in the shadows, unseen and waiting, the first hints of danger began to stir, setting in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Ethan and Leora walked side by side through the station's corridors, their steps echoing against the metal walls. Despite the crowds, the tension in the air was unmistakable. Ethan's instincts told him that something was wrong. He didn't know what exactly, but the slight shift in the energy around them, the way people glanced nervously, the almost imperceptible hum of machinery made his skin prickle. Leora noticed his alertness and offered a small, knowing smile. "You are very cautious," she said softly. "It is admirable," Ethan shrugged lightly, trying to appear casual. "I guess you learn to be. Years of experience tend to make you notice things others don't." He kept his eyes scanning the crowd. Something felt off, though he couldn't put a finger on it. For a while, they walked in silence, watching the bustling life of the station. Merchants shouted their wares, and travelers hurried past with cargo or luggage in hand. Ethan pointed out safe areas and places to avoid, explaining the layout in a calm, methodical manner. Leora listened intently, absorbing every detail. There was a subtle intelligence in her eyes, a quiet understanding that suggested she had learned to survive in many different and difficult situations. "You seem very capable," Ethan said after a while. "I don't think most people could handle this station without getting into trouble." Leora tilted her head thoughtfully. "I have had experience," she said carefully. Her words were measured, almost deliberate, and Ethan could sense she was keeping much to herself. He didn't press. There was something about her that told him she had reasons for staying quiet, reasons he wasn't meant to know yet. As they moved deeper into the station, Ethan's attention was drawn to subtle movements in the crowd. Shadows shifted, figures lingered at the edges of his vision, and his instincts screamed that they were being watched. He slowed his pace, subtly positioning himself between Leora and the crowd. "You are tense," Leora observed, her voice calm but filled with curiosity. "I see it in the way you move. You are prepared for something unseen." Ethan studied her face, impressed by her perception. "You notice a lot," he said. "Most people don't see things like that." She smiled faintly. "I have learned to notice things. It can be useful." Ethan nodded. "It certainly is." He couldn't explain why, but he felt an increasing sense of responsibility for her. Something told him that keeping her safe was more than just part of his job. It felt personal. They reached a quieter section of the station, a hallway lined with small shops and low-hanging lights. Ethan slowed, scanning the area carefully. "Stay close," he said quietly. "I have a feeling we're not alone." Leora nodded, moving smoothly beside him. Her movements were precise, almost effortless, yet there was a tension in her posture that suggested she was ready for anything. Ethan admired her composure. She did not panic, did not hesitate, and yet he could sense the awareness beneath her calm exterior. Suddenly, a small group of figures emerged from the shadows, moving with practiced precision. Ethan instinctively stepped in front of Leora, positioning himself as a shield. His heart raced, but he kept his face calm, his eyes scanning for the best way to handle the situation. The figures were clearly not ordinary travelers. Their movements were coordinated, careful, and deliberate, as if they were trained for confrontation. Ethan recognized the signs immediately. Bounty hunters. They were professionals, and their target was clearly Leora. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't let them reach her, not now, not ever. "Move behind me," he said to Leora, his voice low but firm. She obeyed without question, her trust in him evident. The lead bounty hunter stepped forward, a smirk on his face. "We're just here to have a chat," he said smoothly, though the menace in his tone betrayed his true intentions. "No need for anyone to get hurt." Ethan's hand moved subtly toward his sidearm, ready but careful. "I suggest you leave," he said evenly. "You're not going to get what you want here." The bounty hunter laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Oh, we always get what we want, and you are in the way." He nodded to the others, and they advanced cautiously. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He was trained for situations like this, but he had never faced enemies like these. Humans were limited, but experience, courage, and quick thinking could make a difference. He glanced at Leora, noting her calm, focused expression. She didn't panic. She simply stood ready, her hands relaxed but alert. The tension in the hallway was thick, the crowd around them oblivious to the danger. Ethan realized they had only moments to act. He needed to protect her, and he needed to do it quickly. "Stay behind me," he repeated, moving slightly to position himself between Leora and the advancing bounty hunters. He could see the calculation in their eyes. They expected her to be defenseless. They didn't know that she was anything more than a young woman, and they certainly didn't expect him to be so determined. The lead bounty hunter lunged, attempting to grab her, but Ethan reacted immediately, shoving the attacker back with enough force to throw him off balance. The other hunters hesitated for a split second, surprised by his sudden action. Leora moved with incredible agility, stepping aside, her movements precise and graceful. She didn't fight aggressively, but she was clearly prepared to defend herself if necessary. Ethan watched in awe. There was something extraordinary about her, something beyond human. The standoff continued for what felt like minutes, though in reality it was only seconds. Ethan kept his focus, anticipating their moves, reacting with skill and precision. Every human instinct, every ounce of experience he had was being tested. Finally, the lead bounty hunter backed off slightly, recognizing that their target was not easily reached. "This isn't over," he said, his tone low and dangerous. "We'll be back." With that, the group retreated, disappearing into the crowd as quickly as they had appeared. Ethan exhaled, feeling the adrenaline leave his body slowly. He turned to Leora, whose calm expression never faltered. "You handled that well," she said softly. "You protected me without hesitation." Ethan shook his head, brushing off the compliment. "I didn't know what else to do. You were in danger, and I couldn't just stand there." Leora's eyes softened, a faint warmth in her gaze. "You are brave," she said quietly. "More than most humans I have met." Ethan felt a flush of pride, mixed with a growing sense of responsibility. He didn't fully understand why, but he knew he would do everything in his power to keep her safe. There was something about her, something extraordinary that demanded protection, not out of duty but out of something deeper. As they continued walking, Ethan noticed subtle changes in Leora. Her eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, her movements fluid and precise, almost unnatural. He didn't question it, not yet, but a small seed of curiosity was planted. Who was she really? And why did she seem so aware of danger before it even happened? They reached a quiet observation deck overlooking the docking area. Ships of all sizes moved in and out, their lights reflecting off the polished metal of the station. Leora paused, looking out over the scene with awe and wonder. For a moment the danger seemed distant, the chaos of the station replaced by the beauty of the stars beyond. "It's incredible," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "It is. Sometimes it's easy to forget with everything going on down here." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the ships move gracefully through the docking lanes. Ethan felt a strange sense of calm, a rare moment of peace in the midst of a chaotic world. Yet he knew the danger was not over. The bounty hunters would not give up, and he could feel the tension in the air, waiting for the next challenge. Leora turned to him, her expression serious now. "I trust you," she said quietly, "more than I trust anyone else here." Ethan felt a weight settle on his shoulders, a sense of responsibility he could not ignore. "And I'll do my best," he replied firmly. "I won't let anything happen to you." As they prepared to leave the observation deck and continue through the station, a small movement caught Ethan's eye. A figure was watching them from the shadows, almost invisible except for a faint shimmer in the light. He tensed, realizing that the danger was closer than ever. "Stay close," he whispered to Leora. "We're not done yet." She nodded, her eyes calm but alert. Ethan could see the faint glow of her aura, subtle but unmistakable. She had abilities he couldn't yet comprehend, and yet she had chosen to trust him. Together they moved through the corridors, navigating the station with a mixture of caution and purpose. Ethan's mind raced, thinking of possible threats, escape routes, and ways to keep her safe. Leora walked beside him, her movements graceful and precise, a silent strength in the midst of uncertainty. And somewhere in the depths of the station, hidden from view, the bounty hunters regrouped. Their target was not just a young woman. They were hunting a prize far greater than they realized. But Ethan's presence, his courage, and his human determination had already begun to change the game. The first encounter had passed, but the story was only beginning. Danger lurked in every shadow, and yet amidst the tension and uncertainty, a bond was forming between a human and an extraordinary being. A bond built on trust, courage, and the quiet recognition that even in a vast and dangerous universe, humans could make a difference. The station's corridors had grown quieter as evening approached, the artificial lights casting long shadows along the metal walls. Ethan and Leora moved carefully, aware that the bounty hunters could return at any moment. The earlier confrontation had been a warning. Someone was after her, and Ethan understood more clearly now that this was not a simple pursuit. Ethan's hand hovered near his sidearm, a small comfort against the growing tension. Leora walked beside him with an effortless grace, her movements precise, calm, and alert. She seemed almost to glide through the corridor, yet Ethan noticed the way her eyes constantly scanned the crowd, catching details that even he might have missed. Her awareness was extraordinary, yet she remained quiet, revealing nothing of her true capabilities. They reached a junction where the corridor split into multiple paths. Ethan stopped, listening carefully. A soft hum, almost imperceptible, reached his ears, a sound that was foreign, subtle, but unmistakable to someone trained to detect threats. He turned to Leora, lowering his voice. "Stay close to me," he whispered. "Something tells me they're coming back." Leora nodded, her eyes focused, her calm demeanor unshaken. "I am ready," she said softly. Ethan's instincts proved correct. From around a bend, three figures emerged, moving with stealth and precision. The bounty hunters had returned, more determined this time. Their movements were deliberate, calculated, and trained. They had not expected Ethan to interfere before, and he could see the slight hesitation in their approach. "Stop right there," Ethan called, his voice firm. He stepped forward, positioning himself between Leora and the approaching hunters. His heart raced, but his mind stayed sharp. He had faced dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. These were professional killers, trained to capture or eliminate their target without hesitation. The lead bounty hunter's eyes narrowed. "Step aside, human," he said coldly. "This does not concern you." "I can't do that," Ethan replied evenly. "She's not going anywhere with you." The bounty hunter smirked, raising a small weapon that glimmered faintly in the corridor's lights. "Then you leave us no choice." Before Ethan could react further, the hunter fired. The shot rang out, sharp and precise. Without thinking, Ethan lunged forward, pushing Leora to the side. The bullet struck him squarely in the chest, knocking him off balance. Pain shot through his body, sharp and immediate, yet he gritted his teeth and held himself upright. Leora's eyes widened, a mix of shock and something deeper, fear, concern, and urgency. She moved instinctively, placing her hands near Ethan in a fluid motion. A faint glow radiated from her palms, soft and warm, and the air around them shimmered subtly. The light expanded, wrapping around Ethan, stabilizing him. The pain lessened, his breathing easing as though the energy was knitting him back together. Ethan blinked in astonishment, feeling the warmth spread through his body. What are you?" he asked, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Leora's eyes met his, calm yet intense. "I am not like the others here," she said softly. "You should not have been hurt." "I could not let it happen." Ethan's mind raced. The human courage that had driven him to protect her now collided with the realization that she was something extraordinary, something beyond human understanding. His heart pounded, not from the injury but from the overwhelming truth. She was far more powerful and important than he had ever imagined. The bounty hunters hesitated, sensing the sudden shift in the situation. Their target was no longer simply a young woman. They faced something they could not fully understand. Leora's calm, controlled energy seemed to push them back, subtle but unmistakable, like an invisible barrier. Ethan struggled to his feet, supported by Leora's gentle but firm hold. He could feel the power radiating from her, yet she remained serene, almost delicate despite the display. It was a revelation, a moment that changed everything he thought he knew. "You saved me," he said quietly, awe and gratitude mingling in his voice. I didn't know." Leora shook her head softly. "You saved me first," she replied. "Your bravery gave me the chance to protect you. I could not have done it otherwise." The bounty hunters regrouped, their expressions hardening with determination. They were not easily intimidated, and their weapons were ready. Ethan realized that this was far from over. He had taken the first step by putting himself in harm's way, but the chase was just beginning. Ethan looked at Leora, studying her carefully. She was calm, composed, and resolute. Her eyes, though, betrayed something else, a weight of responsibility, a burden she carried alone. He realized that she was not only powerful but also vulnerable in ways that mattered most to her. She was a target, a being of importance, and he was now deeply entwined in her fate. The lead bounty hunter advanced again, this time with more caution. Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself between Leora and the approaching threat. "You're not taking her," he said firmly, "not while I'm here." The hunter's smirk was tinged with frustration. "Foolish human, you cannot stop us." Ethan's response was simple, "Maybe not alone, but together we can." He glanced at Leora, who nodded slightly. There was a trust in that gesture, a silent agreement that they would face this danger together. The corridor erupted into motion. Ethan moved with surprising agility, guided by adrenaline and his instinct to protect. He intercepted one of the bounty hunters, deflecting a strike with quick thinking rather than brute force. Leora moved beside him, her energy subtly enhancing his strength, guiding his movements. Together, they became a seamless unit, human courage and alien power working in tandem. Despite the intensity of the fight, Ethan never let go of his focus on Leora. Every move he made was calculated to keep her safe, to anticipate the hunter's next strike. He realized in that moment that human determination was not measured by strength alone, but by the willingness to act, to face danger for someone else without hesitation. Leora's abilities became more evident as the confrontation continued. She did not strike aggressively but used her energy to shield Ethan, to create subtle barriers, and to misdirect the hunters. Her control was precise, almost effortless, yet it was clear that she was exerting herself to maintain the protection. Ethan's admiration for her grew, not just for her power, but for the calmness with which she handled the chaos. She was a princess, a being of importance, yet she moved with humility and focus, never losing sight of the immediate danger. The bounty hunters, frustrated by their inability to capture their target, began to retreat. Ethan and Leora did not pursue. They knew better than to let overconfidence make them careless. They moved quickly, putting distance between themselves and the attackers. Finally, they reached a quiet maintenance corridor, hidden from the main flow of the station. Ethan sank to the floor, his chest still aching from the earlier bullet wound, though Leora's energy had stabilized him. He looked at her, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and gratitude. You're not human," he said, finally able to speak the words that had been forming in his mind since the attack. Leora smiled faintly, a soft glow in her eyes. "No," she said simply, "I am not, but I am grateful that you risked yourself for me." That courage, that bravery, it is human, and it is remarkable. Ethan shook his head, still struggling to comprehend. I didn't even know who you were. I couldn't let them hurt you. That is why you are extraordinary, Leora replied, her voice calm yet filled with sincerity. Not because of strength, not because of skill, but because of your heart. That is something even the most powerful cannot take from you. Ethan felt a swell of emotion. The moment was overwhelming, a collision of fear, relief, admiration, and understanding. He realized that human courage was not measured by victories or power, but by the willingness to act for others, even in the face of danger. Leora studied him for a moment, her expression softening. "You have a gift, Ethan," she said, "a gift that I have rarely seen. That is why I trust you. That is why I chose to let you protect me." Ethan swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. He had never considered himself a hero, never believed that an ordinary human could make such a difference. Yet here he was, standing beside a being of incredible power, having risked his life without hesitation. For the first time, he understood the truth of the universe beyond human perception. Humans were not the strongest, the fastest, or the most powerful. But courage, ingenuity, empathy, these were qualities that could change the course of events, influence outcomes, and even inspire beings far beyond Earth to respect and admire humanity. Leora extended her hand, her energy still faintly shimmering around it. "We must move," she said gently. "They will not give up, and we cannot afford to wait." Ethan nodded, rising slowly, still feeling the ache in his chest but ready to continue. Together, they moved through the maintenance corridors, navigating a labyrinth of service tunnels and hidden pathways. Every step required caution, every movement demanded awareness, but the bond between them had strengthened in ways neither had expected. Ethan realized that this was only the beginning. The bounty hunters would return, stronger and more determined, and the challenges ahead would test not only their courage but their ability to trust one another. Yet he felt a growing confidence. With Leora's abilities and his own human determination, they had a chance, not just to survive but to prevail. As they paused in a small alcove to catch their breath, Ethan looked at her, eyes meeting hers. "I still don't know your whole story," he said quietly. "You will in time," Leora replied, a soft glow in her eyes. "For now, it is enough that we protect each other, that we survive together." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known before. He had taken a bullet for someone he barely knew, and in doing so, he had discovered a truth. Human courage, selflessness, and determination were forces to be reckoned with, capable of shaping destinies and inspiring even the most extraordinary beings in the galaxy. They moved forward, side by side, ready to face the dangers that lay ahead. And somewhere in the shadows, the bounty hunters watched, realizing that capturing their target would not be as simple as they had once believed. For the first time, Ethan understood what it meant to be truly human, not just in body, but in spirit, heart, and action. And that understanding would guide every step he took in the battles yet to come. The station had grown darker as night approached, though artificial lights still flickered along the corridors, casting long shadows that shifted with the movement of travelers and workers. Ethan and Leora moved cautiously, their steps deliberate, every sense alert to the faintest hint of danger. The encounter with the bounty hunters earlier had been a warning, and both knew the enemy would not give up easily. Ethan's chest still ached from the bullet, though Leora's energy had stabilized him. He walked beside her, careful to match her pace, and marveled at the calmness with which she moved. Her presence was steadying, almost soothing, and yet there was an intensity beneath it that warned him she was ready for anything. "We need to find a safe place," Ethan said quietly. "Somewhere they won't expect us, somewhere we can rest and plan our next move." Leora nodded. "There are areas within the station few visit," she said softly. "Old maintenance sectors, storage areas, places that are quiet, hidden from most eyes. We can use them for a short time, enough to recover." They moved through side corridors, avoiding the main thoroughfares, and Ethan found himself relying not only on his training, but on his growing understanding of Leora's abilities. Her awareness of the environment, her subtle gestures and suggestions, guided him through twists and turns he might have overlooked. It was strange, realizing that a human like him was now walking alongside someone so extraordinary, yet the connection between them was tangible. As they walked, Ethan spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "I still don't understand how you did that before with the bullet. I've never seen anything like it." Leora's eyes softened, a faint glow radiating from them. "It is a part of me," she said simply. "A power I cannot hide, though I rarely reveal it. You were in danger and I could not let harm come to you." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of awe and humility. I just, I acted without thinking. I didn't know who you were, didn't know the risks. I just did what felt right." "That is why you are remarkable," Leora replied. "Not because of strength or skill, but because of your courage and heart. You risked yourself for someone you barely knew. That is something even the most powerful cannot replicate." Ethan felt a surge of warmth at her words. He had never considered himself a hero, never imagined that simple human bravery could matter in a galaxy filled with beings far stronger and more advanced than himself. Yet in Leora's gaze, he felt recognition, respect, and trust. They reached a narrow passageway, hidden behind a series of storage doors. Leora paused, her hands lightly brushing the metal surface as if sensing something beyond vision. "This will serve," she said softly. "It is quiet and few travel here. We can rest without drawing attention." Ethan followed her inside, the small space dimly lit but safe. He sank to the floor, still feeling the ache from the bullet, though it no longer dominated his thoughts. Leora remained standing, her posture relaxed but alert, eyes scanning the corridor for any sign of intrusion. "You do not rest," Ethan observed, a hint of concern in his voice. "You should. You just saved my life." "I cannot afford to let my guard down," she replied. "They will return. I must be ready." Her voice carried a quiet determination that impressed Ethan. He realized that her strength was not only in her abilities but in her discipline, her focus, and her sense of responsibility. For a while they sat in silence, the distant hum of the station filling the space. Ethan studied her quietly, noticing the subtle glow in her eyes, the faint energy that seemed to radiate from her even as she appeared calm. He wondered what it must be like to carry such power and yet live with constant vigilance. "I don't know what to do next," Ethan admitted softly. "I mean, we can't stay here forever. They'll keep coming." Leora's gaze met his. "We will move carefully," she said. "Together we can navigate this. You have skills, courage, and quick thinking. That is valuable even against those who are stronger than you. We must use our strengths wisely." Ethan nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that this was not just about survival. It was about teamwork, trust, and strategy. Humans might lack alien abilities, but their ingenuity, resilience, and determination could make all the difference. After a short rest, they continued moving through the maintenance corridors, avoiding main passageways and crowded areas. Leora led the way, her movements fluid, almost gliding, while Ethan followed closely, relying on his instincts and training to anticipate threats. As they navigated the labyrinthine halls, they encountered several small patrols of station security, robots and automated sentries, meant to prevent unauthorized movement. Leora guided Ethan carefully, teaching him subtle ways to move undetected, using shadows, angles, and timing. Ethan listened and learned quickly, impressed by her ability to merge human cunning with alien intuition. They reached a larger storage area, filled with crates and containers stacked to the ceiling. Leora motioned for Ethan to follow her behind a large stack of metal containers. "This will be our next stop," she said softly. "It provides cover and we can observe without being seen." Ethan crouched beside her, feeling the weight of the moment. He realized how much he had come to rely on her, and how much she seemed to trust him in return. The bond between them was growing stronger, formed in the heat of danger and tempered by mutual respect. Suddenly, a faint noise reached their ears, a soft click, almost imperceptible. Ethan tensed, signaling Leora to stay still. From the shadows, a small reconnaissance drone emerged, its sensors scanning the area. Ethan recognized it as a scout sent by the bounty hunters. "They're tracking us," he whispered. Leora's eyes narrowed, her subtle energy flaring slightly. "I see it," she replied. "Do not panic. Watch and learn." She moved with precision, her hands gesturing subtly in a way Ethan could not fully understand. The drone's sensors flickered, then malfunctioned briefly, as if confused by an invisible barrier. It hesitated, then retreated, unable to send a signal back to its handlers. Ethan stared in amazement. "How did you do that?" he asked quietly. "It is a small use of my abilities," Leora explained. "Enough to mislead them, enough to protect us. You will learn more in time." Ethan nodded, understanding that he was witnessing something extraordinary. Yet more importantly, he realized that human courage and quick thinking had allowed them to survive the initial attack, and now combined with Leora's abilities, they had a real chance of outmaneuvering their pursuers. They continued moving through the storage area, finding a small maintenance lift that could take them to a less traveled section of the station. Ethan operated the controls while Leora monitored the surroundings, guiding him to avoid any patrols or automated sentries. The lift descended quietly, taking them to a part of the station few humans ever visited. Once they arrived, Leora led Ethan to a narrow corridor lined with service doors and ventilation shafts. "We can move faster here," she said softly. "Fewer eyes, fewer sensors. It will allow us to stay ahead of them." Ethan followed her, trusting her instincts and expertise. As they moved, they encountered a locked door blocking their path. Ethan quickly examined it, noticing a panel with a code input. He tried a few guesses based on the station's layout, but the door remained locked. Leora reached forward, her hand hovering over the panel. A soft light emanated from her fingertips, and the panel clicked open. Ethan stared in awe. "I don't even know how to do that," he admitted. "It is simple for those who understand the energy around machines," Leora said calmly. "I can guide us. You do not need to understand fully, only to follow." Ethan nodded, feeling both amazed and humbled. He realized that the universe was vast, filled with beings and powers beyond his comprehension. Yet he also knew that his own skills, observation, quick thinking, courage were invaluable. Together, they formed a partnership that balanced human ingenuity with alien ability. They moved quietly, avoiding sensors and patrols, eventually reaching a hidden alcove near the edge of the station. From there, they could observe a large docking bay where ships arrived and departed continuously. Leora paused, her eyes scanning the area. "We can rest here briefly," she said. "It is relatively safe and we can plan our next move." Ethan sank to the floor again, exhaustion and tension catching up with him. "I never imagined a day like this," he said quietly. I never thought I would be protecting someone like you or learning to work like this." Leora smiled faintly, her glow softening. "You are learning quickly," she said, "and you have done more than I expected. That is why I trust you. That is why I value your courage." Ethan felt a swell of pride mixed with humility. He realized that being human was not about power or skill alone. It was about heart, determination, and the willingness to act when others might hesitate. Leora's abilities were extraordinary, but without his courage and quick thinking, they might not have survived even this far. As they rested, they spoke quietly, sharing stories of their pasts, though Leora remained careful not to reveal too much. Ethan learned that she had traveled across many worlds, that she had faced dangers far beyond human imagination, and that she carried a responsibility he could barely comprehend. Yet despite all of this, she trusted him, and he trusted her in return. Night deepened across the station, the hum of machinery and distant chatter forming a background to their quiet vigil. Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the bounty hunters would not give up, that danger would continue to follow them, but he also knew that together, he and Leora could survive. He glanced at her, watching her calm, controlled expression. She was extraordinary, yet there was a vulnerability, a humanity beneath her alien exterior that made her even more remarkable. Ethan realized that their partnership was not just about survival, it was about trust, respect, and the recognition that even in a vast, dangerous universe, humans could make a difference. "We should move soon," Leora said softly. "They will be back and we must stay ahead." Ethan nodded, rising to his feet. "I'm ready," he said. "We'll get through this together." They left the alcove, moving cautiously through the maintenance corridors once more. Ethan relied on his training and instincts, while Leora guided him with subtle gestures and quiet instructions. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated, yet they moved with a fluidity that made them almost invisible to the casual observer. As they reached a junction leading to the outer sections of the station, Ethan felt a sense of confidence growing within him. He had faced danger before, yes, but never like this. Never with stakes so high, never with someone so extraordinary by his side. And yet he understood something crucial. Human courage, quick thinking, and determination could shine even in the face of overwhelming odds. They paused briefly, looking out over a docking bay filled with ships of all sizes. Leora's eyes glowed softly as she scanned the area, her subtle energy keeping them hidden from prying eyes. Ethan watched her, realizing that he had never encountered anyone like her, and that their fates were now intertwined. The bounty hunters were still out there, regrouping and plotting their next move. But Ethan felt a quiet determination, a sense that no matter what came, he and Leora could face it. Together, human courage and alien power formed a partnership that was greater than the sum of its parts. As they prepared to move once more, Ethan felt a profound realization settle in his mind. The universe was vast and full of dangers, yet humans had something unique, the ability to act, to risk themselves for others, to use courage and ingenuity in ways that could change outcomes. Leora's trust in him was proof of that, and he vowed silently to live up to it. And so, side by side, they moved forward into the shadows of the station, ready to face the dangers ahead, their bond stronger than ever, their determination unshakable, and their courage alight against the darkness. The station had grown almost silent as the night deepened. Lights flickered faintly in the upper corridors, casting long, shifting shadows along the walls. Ethan and Leora moved cautiously, side by side, every sense alert. They had evaded the bounty hunters so far, but both knew that the main threat had yet to appear. This was the final test, the moment when courage, skill, and trust would determine whether they survived. Ethan's chest still bore the faint ache from the earlier bullet, though Leora's energy had stabilized him. He moved carefully, every step deliberate, aware that the smallest mistake could prove disastrous. Despite his fatigue, he felt a growing determination. He had risked his life for Leora before, and he would do it again if necessary. Courage, he realized, was not about fearlessness. It was about acting despite fear. Leora walked beside him with calm precision, her presence steady and reassuring. She radiated a subtle glow, an energy that seemed to harmonize with the rhythm of the station itself. Ethan had come to trust not only her power but her judgment. Together, they were a team, human and alien working in unison, each complementing the other's strengths. They reached the upper levels of the station, a network of catwalks and observation decks that overlooked the bustling docking bays below. Leora paused, her gaze sweeping the area. "This is where we will confront them," she said softly. "The enemy will attempt to corner us. We must be ready." Ethan nodded, his hand resting lightly on the railing as he scanned the space. "I'm ready," he replied. "We've made it this far, we can do this." From the shadows, the bounty hunters emerged, moving in coordinated silence. They were no longer just scouts. They were the main force, trained, prepared, and determined to capture Leora. Their weapons gleamed in the dim light, and their eyes were cold and focused. Ethan stepped forward instinctively, positioning himself between Leora and the approaching threat. "You won't take her," he said firmly. "Not while I'm here." The lead hunter's eyes narrowed. "You are persistent, human," he said, his voice low and threatening. "But persistence will not save you. Stand aside or you will regret it." Ethan did not flinch. "I said no." The hunter snarled and raised his weapon. Time seemed to slow as Ethan's heart raced. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. The stakes were higher, the enemy more skilled, and the outcome uncertain. Yet he stood firm, driven by courage and the desire to protect someone who had come to mean so much to him. The first shot rang out. Ethan reacted instantly, moving to shield Leora once again. The bullet missed by inches, striking the railing instead and sending sparks flying. He glanced at Leora, who was calm, her subtle energy ready to assist. Together, they moved in coordinated rhythm. Ethan's quick thinking and reflexes allowed him to anticipate the hunter's movements, while Leora's alien abilities provided protection and guidance. She did not attack aggressively, but her energy formed subtle barriers, deflected incoming fire, and created openings for Ethan to act. One of the bounty hunters lunged from above, attempting to strike them from the catwalk. Ethan reacted with a quick sidestep, grabbing a loose panel and using it as a shield. Leora's energy flowed around him, stabilizing his stance and giving him the strength to push back. "You're stronger than you realize," Leora said quietly, her eyes glowing faintly. "Your courage, it guides me as much as my abilities guide you." Ethan's breath came in short, controlled bursts. "I'm not strong," he admitted, "but I know what matters, and right now it's keeping you safe." The bounty hunters, frustrated by their inability to strike directly, attempted to surround them. Ethan realized that strategy was as important as strength. He moved with precision, using cover, angles, and timing to outmaneuver them. Leora's subtle manipulations of energy disrupted the hunters' coordination, creating confusion and hesitation. Together, they forced the enemy to split, isolating one hunter at a time. Ethan engaged him directly, using quick reflexes, careful strikes, and environment to gain the upper hand. Leora stayed close, her energy forming protective barriers and guiding Ethan's movements. It was an extraordinary partnership, human ingenuity and courage working alongside alien power. At one point, a hunter attempted to flank them, moving silently across the catwalk. Ethan noticed the movement just in time and shouted a warning. Leora reacted instantly, sending a pulse of energy that caused the hunter to stumble, losing balance. Ethan seized the moment, disarming the hunter with a quick maneuver. "Good work," Leora said softly, her voice calm and encouraging. Ethan nodded, feeling the adrenaline surge. "We're not done yet," he replied. "We have to finish this." The lead hunter, seeing his team falter, advanced more aggressively. Ethan faced him directly, knowing that courage alone would not be enough. He combined careful observation, quick thinking, and precise action to counter the hunter's attacks. Leora's energy flared subtly around them, protecting Ethan and giving him openings to strike strategically. The fight reached its peak intensity, a combination of physical skill, mental calculation, and the unusual advantage of Leora's powers. Ethan realized that human determination was a force in itself. He was not the strongest, but his willingness to risk everything, to act decisively, gave him an edge that even the experienced bounty hunters could not anticipate. Finally, the lead hunter hesitated, recognizing that their target was no longer easily captured. Leora's presence was formidable, and Ethan's courage and ingenuity had proven more than they could overcome. With a frustrated snarl, the hunter signaled his retreat. The remaining hunters quickly followed, disappearing into the shadows of the station. Ethan sank to his knees, exhausted, his chest aching faintly but no longer threatening. He looked at Leora, who stood calmly, her glow soft and steady. She regarded him with a mix of admiration and gratitude. "You did well," she said quietly. "You were brave, decisive, and selfless. That is why we survived." Ethan shook his head, trying to catch his breath. I did what I had to do. You were in danger. I couldn't let them take you." Leora smiled faintly, her glow warming slightly. "That is what makes humans remarkable. Courage, empathy, and the willingness to act for others. That is something even the most powerful cannot replicate." Ethan realized the truth of her words. He had never considered himself extraordinary, yet in this moment, he understood that bravery and selflessness were a kind of strength all their own. Leora's abilities were extraordinary, yes, but his courage had been essential. Without it, her powers alone might not have been enough to ensure their survival. They moved to a quieter part of the station, away from the confrontation. Ethan leaned against the railing, still catching his breath, while Leora examined the area with careful attention. "We must leave the station soon," she said. "They will not give up entirely, but for now we have gained a reprieve." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering tension. "I can't believe we made it," he said quietly. I didn't know I had it in me." "You did," Leora replied softly. "Courage is not something one discovers in peace. It is revealed in moments like this, when the choice to act is more important than the fear of consequence. You have shown that courage, and it has made all the difference." Ethan looked at her, realizing for the first time the depth of her trust. She had relied on him, even in a situation far beyond human comprehension, and he had acted without hesitation, guided by instinct, moral clarity, and the human capacity for bravery. Leora's gaze softened, her energy settling into a gentle radiance. "We will leave soon," she repeated. "But you must know something. You have earned my trust, Ethan. That is a rare gift for anyone, human or otherwise." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of pride and purpose unlike anything he had experienced before. He realized that humans, though limited in power, could influence outcomes, inspire others, and even change the course of events through courage, intelligence, and moral action. "We'll leave together," he said firmly. "No matter what comes next, we face it as a team." Leora nodded, her glow intensifying slightly. "Yes, together." They navigated the remaining corridors of the station with care, avoiding patrols and remaining alert. Leora guided them through hidden paths, small maintenance tunnels, and rarely used exits. Ethan followed closely, his focus sharp, his resolve unwavering. Every step was a testament to human determination and the growing bond between them. Finally, they reached the station's exterior docking area, where a small, inconspicuous ship waited. Leora motioned for Ethan to board first, ensuring he was safe. He glanced at her, sensing her readiness and strength, yet also the vulnerability she carried. "We're not done yet," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. "But we have survived, and that is the first step. Together we can face whatever comes next." Ethan boarded the ship, taking a moment to catch his breath and steady his nerves. Leora followed, her presence calm and reassuring. As the ship lifted from the station, Ethan looked out at the vast expanse of space, realizing how small and fragile life could seem, and yet how human courage could make a difference, even in a galaxy filled with extraordinary beings and dangers. Leora stood beside him, her glow faint but steady. "You have proven something important," she said softly. "Humans are capable of bravery and determination that even the most advanced civilizations recognize. You have inspired me, Ethan. Your actions have shown me the strength of humanity." Ethan felt a mixture of awe and humility. He had never sought recognition or praise, yet hearing her words filled him with a profound sense of purpose. He realized that courage, empathy, and moral action were forces that could resonate across worlds, change outcomes, and shape destinies. As the ship sped away from the station, leaving danger behind for the moment, Ethan and Leora shared a quiet moment of understanding. They had survived against impossible odds, relying on trust, teamwork, and the unique strengths each brought to the table. Ethan knew the journey ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges they could not yet foresee. But he also knew that with courage, determination, and the willingness to act for others, humans could make a difference in ways no one could predict. Leora turned to him, a soft smile on her lips. "The universe is vast, Ethan. There will be more challenges, more dangers. But now I know I can face them with you by my side. Your bravery has earned my trust, and that is something that will last far longer than this moment." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of resolve he had never known. He understood now that courage, empathy, and determination were not just traits, they were legacies. And in protecting Leora, he had discovered something extraordinary: the power of being human and the profound impact it could have on a world far larger than himself. As the stars stretched out before them, infinite and dazzling, Ethan and Leora prepared for the journey ahead. Together, human ingenuity and alien power formed a partnership that would face whatever challenges the universe might send, proving that bravery, determination, and trust could triumph even in the most extraordinary circumstances. And so, the ship glided through the endless expanse of space, carrying two allies, bound by trust, courage, and the recognition that even the smallest actions of a human heart could shape the fate of worlds.